Okay, we are good to go, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. All right, it is 5:32. This is the study session for this is Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. This is a study session. We have two matters up, and Director Sager gets to lead us in both. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Good evening, Mayor Stewart, members of City Council. Staff has invited Bross Group to the study session tonight to inform City Council of the purchase of a Series 4 business continuity device rather than the new server that was included in the approved 2021 budget. Bross Group has advised the city server that was identified for replacement should last another 2 years barring unforeseen circumstances. Staff included $25,000 for the new server in the capital fund budget, and those funds will be used to purchase the continuity device, which will cost $22,000. Beginning in 2022, storage backup fees will increase by just over $4,000 annually. I will now turn it over to Bross Group for further explanation, but I'm available to answer any questions you may have at their time after their presentation. With us tonight is Scott Porter, the General Manager for Bross Group, and Tracy Kelly, Bross Group's Director of Infrastructure. Tracy?
Hello, Mayor and Councilors. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us. As you said, as Ms. Siger was saying, my name is Tracy Kelly. I'm the Infrastructure Manager at Bross Group. With me today is Scott Porter, my manager and General Manager of Bross Group. And we wanted to come and answer any questions you may be having on the buzz of this new data service device that we've been offering and will be installing soon. Great piece of technology. We really enjoy working with it. This solution not only allows the city to repurpose the capital, but is not needed to replace the equipment at this time, as it's still very functional and serviceable. But it also allows the city to move forward with a more resilient and flexible operating model in line with current technologies. This level of flexibility will move you from a restore point or recovery point from just days, or which could be days or weeks, to recover from an incident in as little as hours. Cherry Hills Village currently has a traditional backup solution, and with this solution of data, you still will have that backup solution. We'll still be able to recover data, but we're looking to accomplish an element of business continuity, which will combat a wide array of failures such as malware and ransomware. Ransomware being, a big hype right now. This, in fact, is another element in your overall defense in depth approach. And as you're looking at the screen right now, you'll see the business continuity modernization card. I'm sorry, I just lost it. And as you can see, it'll improve the resilience and flexibility of the protection of Cherry Hills Village data. It's pretty spelled out right here. The capture of data happens more frequently, where with your current backup solution, you're backing up once a day. In the event of a failure, we would rely on those backups to bring the data and your operating systems back online, but we have an element of loss to that period of time for anything that took place after the backup. So we retain data longer. We have the ability to back up data for an entire year, or under a different program, we can go with an indefinite backup solution. It stores this data in multiple locations. If you're familiar with the 3-2-1 approach, we want 3 operating elements of the data. We have 2 backups and then at least 1 offsite. With this new model, we'll be able to restore your data much quicker. And if you look at the image at the lower right-hand corner, you'll see kind of the square. That's the data element that we'll be adding. On the left, you'll see virtual machines that are running in your operating system, running in your organization now. Those virtual machines will be backed up the data device. And in the event of a failure within a server or an operating system corruption, we'll be able to launch those virtual machines from the data device and have you back up in an hour or 2 at the most. If you want to move on to the next slide, this is just more of the current state of what Cherry Hills Village looks like. Very traditional backup. Again, backups are taking place once a day. With the data device, we can take backups every 5 minutes. It's stored on site in a data device, and then the data device itself will copy the data up to the cloud in 2 separate locations. In the event of a failure, again, we can have the data device up and running with all your virtual machines running again within a couple of hours. If there was some kind of catastrophic failure within the server room itself and the data device was destroyed as well, we'd be able to create what's called the site-to-site VPN with those cloud storage solutions and go ahead and launch those virtual machines and have access to the data from there. So again, there's multiple levels of failure and recovery. If you want to go ahead and take a look at that third slide. Again, this is use case elements, kind of going into what I was just talking about, building the data room damage, rebuilding from data room damage, server failure or damage, and then data corruption. All elements that we'll be able to target and handle with the data source device. And that pretty much covers the information on there. And I know that you've seen pamphlets on it before, so if you'd like, we could go ahead and move to any questions that you might have on this new system.
Thank you. Appreciate that presentation. We can go down. Oh, Councilor Blum, you're visible.
Well, I'm on this other one. Well, I'm here, but I have no questions.
Councilor Sheldon, questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Kelly, thank you very much for your presentation. I just have one, I think just one quick question. The system itself, if it needs to get an upgrade, is it something that can be upgraded coming from a non-tech person? Is this something that can be done electronically, and can it be added on to or enhanced, or when this thing gets out of date, do we scrap it and start over again with a new system in a few years?
Not at all. And yes, it can be. It'd be updated completely remotely. This is not a conventional operating system that's running on it. It's more called a firmware. And yes, we can remote into that and update the firmware as Datto, the organization who built the unit, updates their operating systems or firmware. We'll be able to connect and update that as well. Downtime would be, since it is a firmware and not a full operating system, it is much smaller. So therefore, the downtime to copy that firmware onto the unit and have it rebooted onto the new firmware, it just takes a short period of time.
Thank you.
Councilor Gallagher.
Thank you for coming, Tracy and Scott. Help us understand. I understand there's data backup. How does the system stop data breaches?
That would be more along your entire defense in depth approach. Your first line of defense would be your firewall, and we are currently managing those as well. So we make sure that the firmware and security policies are always up to date on that as well. Data breaches can happen from any direction. So we take a look at your workstations, make sure that they're fully patched with the latest Windows operating system patches, along with the malware that's running on there. We just make sure that everything's up to date. And we can really get in depth here. We take a look at your network switches, your wireless access points, and make sure that they also have the latest firmware additions. And that, again, creates that defense in depth, a whole approach to protecting your organization. The data devices, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Could I add
Thank
a little
you.
to your response, Tracy?
Sorry, I didn't hear that last question.
Please, Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, so Councilor Gallagher, it's a very fair question. The device itself does not stop breaches, but it does, what it allows us to do is adds a capability that we don't have today, in that in a very real time, it analyzes the backups that are being taken, whether it be every 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It inspects those from a behavior perspective. So the current antivirus protection in place by the city is very much signature based. And those signatures are based upon what we know, right? This signature exists, right? And those profiles exist. This system adds to that, to Tracy's point about defense in depth, is it looks at a file behavior and says it doesn't matter what the signature is. We know that the system knows that a file grows at a certain amount over weeks, months, quarters. If all of a sudden a particular file starts to grow abnormally large, that behavior of the backup will trigger an alert. And so if somebody sticks a USB file into a workstation and bypasses the antivirus, this system gives us one more capability regardless of what signature is out there, even if it's a new one, it says that behavior is odd, and then will alert us so we can start isolating the backups and start isolating the systems. Is that helpful to your question?
Yes, it is. And related to that, there was a community in northern Colorado that had a wire transfer with the loss of roughly $1 million. How would this system, and that's just, we make mistakes, we're human. Would this system help trigger and catch something like that?
I believe that breach was related to a phishing incident where someone fell prey to email that asked for some information and asked for an activity to take place. So this system would not help with that per se. However, one of your existing systems, the web root system that's in place, actually has training available. And so I would say to remediate, or not to remediate, to help defend against that. Again, Tracy's defense in depth is that training should be a routine element to help people spot spear phishing or phishing attempts or suspicious emails.
Yeah, thank you. Last question. And Jessica, maybe you can jump in. I don't know how we bank as a city, but would this pick up if you had people jumping into our systems, bad guys jumping into our systems and ultimately jumping, picking up passwords, that kind of stuff, in affecting our banking? Any protection there?
One of the greatest protections of the data device is that it's not running on like a Windows operating system, which is often targeted for those types of attacks. It takes a very specialized code. And when you're talking about data and it running on a firmware, it's not special. Well, I mean, it is specialized. So it's not an operating system that people would understand enough to attack. It wouldn't be, most attacks take place utilizing tools, readily available tools, to go in and work with your existing infrastructure. The data device kind of sits on the outside of that with the type of operating system, more or less a firmware instead of an operating system. So they wouldn't have the code, they wouldn't have the knowledge base to infiltrate.
Yep. Thank you. That's all.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Thanks. I just had a couple of questions that might give Mike a little more information that he's looking for too. So right now, our backups are stored off-site somewhere. Where? Is that a service that do we have our own servers there? Are we paying for a service?
Yes, you've actually got multiple backup solutions. Well, the backup solution itself is produced by Veeam, which creates a local copy of all your data, and it's stored locally. Then that local copy is copied up to an organization called Wasabi, of all things. And we've got what's called a bucket there, and your data is encrypted and saved in the cloud.
Okay, and Wasabi's been around for how long? As far as you know, do you know how long Wasabi's been around and what their track record, what our existing track record of, on-site has its own vulnerabilities, but I think what I'm more focused at this point is we're using Wasabi now. They have a backup of our data. It is encrypted. But so are lots of things that have been breached recently. And then, now we're moving to a different system. How long has this new company been in business? When they make 2 copies of our data in the cloud, where is that stored? What happens if they go out of business next year? Those are the kinds of questions I'm interested in, sort of track record and.
Yeah, absolutely. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, let me answer those questions, please. So, so right now your data is up in Wasabi, and long track record. They work with a lot of companies, and they're a good company. And there's nothing wrong with the approach we have in place. the challenge with it is very traditional cloud storage, whether we were dumping it to Azure or Amazon or Wasabi or Backblaze, all good companies, getting the data in, right? Easy. It's so much data. And so if we ever had to restore from the cloud, the amount of time it would take to draw all your data down from the cloud to some place for us to use it to restore, therein lies the days or weeks delay, right? Now, also, your data today is commingled. It would be in Azure or Amazon or Backblaze, right? So the advantage of this approach is that this data is going up to a data center in Pennsylvania, and then it is geo-replicated back to a data center in Utah. So we have two geographically separated data centers with a strong backbones, right? So from a data separation perspective, you have resiliency there. As far as data, I don't remember exactly. They went public 18 months ago, so they're a publicly traded company now. Datto continues to acquire companies and acquire technology. The risk of them going out of business, I think, is slim and none, but who can say, right? I mean, but they are a solid company. They've been around, I believe, 15 plus years as well. They are a very good company, and they focus solely on the managed service provider space. That is their business. And so they have a very good track record. So is that responsive to your question?
Yeah, definitely. And are the data centers, do they operate the data centers, or are they, taking space in someone else's data center?
So is it a colo? I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I do know the data center are SOC 2, SOC 1 and 2 certified, and they do have the ISO certifications. I'll take a note and get an answer to that question.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a Datto-owned data center or if they run a colo, but I believe they own them.
Okay.
I believe so too. And not only that, Scott touched base on the fact that they only tailor to managed services, which might be a reason you haven't heard the name Datto, because they really kind of only deal with us or managed services as a whole. They are also a network engineering company. They sell network hardware, and they compete with the likes of Cisco and Palo Alto and Fortinet. So they are highly secure and with the latest technology and firewall.
All right. That's it for me. Thanks.
Councilor Wheel.
Thank you, Mayor. The question I have is, well, the data moves so fast, and with you replicating fairly frequently, here you have some piece of ransomware introduced, and it starts to bring things down to its knees. How do you prevent that from making its way to Pennsylvania, to Utah? And so even though we're backed up, because we're backed up pretty quickly, if we didn't find out instantaneously that we had a problem, how do we know that the backup data is any good?
That is
Primary backup. I'm sorry, Scott, did you want to go take this?
it's a perfect question. Tracy, go ahead and answer, and then we can talk about their proprietary technology afterwards. Go ahead, Tracy.
Okay. You're correct. The data transfer that will take place initially will take time. It will tax the local network. I don't know if I would consider bringing it to its knees, but that first initial copy process, we would definitely want to target maybe some evening hours for it. We have multiple solutions. We can actually take a copy. Data will send us out a hard drive, and we can make a copy of all the data and ship it to them, and they'll restore it there. Once that's completed, once we get that initial infrastructure built, the delta copies, just the difference, your block deltas really don't take a whole lot of time. The backups after that are just backing up any kind of difference that has taken place over the last hour or 5 minutes or whatever the interval is.
I was actually coming at it from a little bit different direction.
Let me answer that.
Yeah.
Council, I think I have the answer to your question.
Okay.
This is one of the reasons why we like the Cirrus device. The backup process itself is a it's different than what you'll find in most backup systems. So the backup and replication process is proprietary. It is different and unique in that every single backup stands alone. And so in most backup systems, and I'm going to do the very high level, in most backup systems, I take a backup on Sunday, and then I take a backup on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday. Then I take all those deltas, all those differentials, and I smush them into a new base. And then I start over Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, smush, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And in that fashion, to your point, that if ransomware is in there and you don't catch it, you've corrupted your backups. The beauty of the Cirrus device is, besides the fact when we take that backup, whether it be 5 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever that interval is, it inspects that backup and goes, looks good. It even tests it. Even the back end, it tests, can I boot that up? Right? And if it can't boot it up, it throws a flag in our dashboard and we see it go red. So we can actually see a screenshot of booting up the operating system for each of those backups. But that backup at 10 o'clock stands alone. And the one at 10:15 stands alone. The one at 10:30 stands alone. So if we get hit with ransomware and we don't know right away, then if we got hit at 10:30 and we don't discover it until 12, then we'll simply take the 10:15 backup. And I don't need to take all the differential, all those changes that happened along the way. I don't need to mush all those together. Every single backup on this system stands alone and can be restored from, independent of any other backup, right? And since, right, today, I believe your backup history is either 17 days or 30 days, depending upon the data file. The beauty of this system is we'll be able to store data for a year out into the cloud. And so whereas I lose my window to restore the city at most 30 days, the majority of our data, I believe, is at 17, but at the most I can go out is 30 days. Once this system is implemented and fully operational, we'll be able to go back a full year if we need to. Now, the city attorney might say, I don't want to store it for 12 months. And so whatever policy guidelines need to be in place. But what I'm saying is we have the ability now to store for a significantly longer period, so that, and ransomware is getting better. It's getting better all the time. They used to just wait 2 weeks, then they waited 30 days. And now ransomware is sitting idle 90 days because most organizations only store backups for about 90 days and then they just throw them away, right? And so it's a perfect question. It's a perfect concern. And this is why we love this solution, is because it gets around a lot of those problems with traditional backup. Did that respond to your question?
Yeah, thank you. Very clearly. Appreciate the answer. That's all I have.
Councilor Safavi.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly and Porter, for the review provided. So I've set up a lot of business disaster recovery and continuity for a lot of different companies. So a lot of questions that have come to my mind, but not necessarily around what you guys are implementing, but really more about what we have in place already for the city. Started made me think about it. But let me start with one of the basic questions. The electronic data, the way we define it right now for our city, what is it? Is it just emails? Is what the employees put in the network? It's more of a question for maybe the city manager or Director Sager. What is electronic data for our city? How do you define that?
Most of the data that's being backed up is the backup of the actual virtual machine. So a snapshot is taken of the virtual machine, which kind of is a picture of the way that the operating system looks and has all the data at that point in time. That snapshot is backed up to another machine. So the great thing about it is that even though it's a snapshot of a virtual machine and its operating system, it's C drive, it's D drive, whatever the case may be, we have a couple of options. If we need the entire virtual machine restored, we could do that. If we need to break into that backup of that virtual machine, we can drill down to the file level and just restore a file. And okay. So that's your data types. So
okay, maybe I misunderstood this then. Is this then for the devices. That's what you're talking about. We are not backing up every email or if an Excel table is generated, let's say by Jessica in the network. Are those being backed up every whatever intervals that we discussed? They
Yes.
are, correct?
Yes, I mean, when you're talking about email, I'm sorry, sir, Counselor, I didn't hear everything you said, but your Exchange server, your mail server is also on premise and it's considered a virtual machine. So a snap of that is being taken, which also consists of all emails, current in history and archives, and that's being backed up as well. So yes, even if we lost your mail exchanger, we'd still be able to restore that and get you back up and running.
Good. So then the question is, maybe Jessica and Chris, that's for you. So if the employees work on their desktop, then that's not backed up, correct?
The C drive, yes, the laptop itself and whatever somebody might save on their work computer hard drive is not backed up as I understand it. But everything that they save to the network drive, and everybody has their own personal space on the network drive or the U drive, that is all backed up.
Okay,
Yes.
so then do we have a policy, or do we have not a policy, standard operating procedure, whatever we want to call it, for all the employees, that anything that is city related needs to be worked on, on the network drive, not on their desktop? Is that understood by all the city workers then?
Yes, it is something that we advise all new employees and all current employees that they're not supposed to be saving anything to their desktop. They should be saving everything on the server so it's backed up every time we back up.
Okay, is it advised or is it required? Because if it's not required, they're not going to go, we could potentially use some data, right?
Sure. We have them sign a policy in their handbook. So that says that they're supposed to. We don't necessarily go computer to computer to make sure that there's nothing on their desktops, but they do have to sign the handbook policy when they start.
Okay. A reminder might be good, because now we're going to go introduce this, and so it might be good for them. The other question is, if you look at, the way we run the city, is it fair to say 100% or 99% of what we do is electronic? What percent is not electronic, is hard copy that is not being backed up?
Was that a question directed?
No, that's for
the city
city
manager.
manager and the director.
I don't know if I would have a percentage. I would think the majority of it is, we have paper copies that go in the records room, but we also have electronic copies of those as well. So we tend to keep both an electronic copy and the paper copy in the records room for records retention purposes.
Okay, great. And then go ahead.
I would just add to that, I think that there are certain types of documents that we have historically kept in paper form going way back, building permits and all sorts of things like that. One of the benefits of COVID, well, not of COVID, but of the lockdown, is that it has forced us to go more electronic, just about everything. And so we should have electronic copies of a lot of the information that historically has only been in paper form.
Okay, and then my last question is, I think somebody brought this up. How long do we retain the data? For some industries, you retain it for at least 100 years. For some is less. So what is the policy for our city? How long do we retain electronic and hard copy data? Do we have one?
We have a records retention policy, so it depends on the type of document. Certain documents we have to retain forever. In some documents, it's a 2-year period, it's a 3-year period, but we do have a records retention policy that we follow.
Okay.
Can I just jump in, Jessica, Director Sager? That is based on the statewide municipal records retention schedule, correct?
Correct.
So Councilor Salvavi, this is a set of standards that's established for municipalities throughout the state. And then it further categorizes the type of data and how long it must be kept. And I'll just add a caveat that if there's legal reasons for documents to be kept longer, I will override, we work to override that so that it's retained longer if necessary.
Perfect. You actually answered my question. So that's all. Thank you. Back to you.
All right, thank you. I had one follow-up question. I'm seeing the chief here. I wondered about the capacity of the system. Has the chief thought about how officer cameras may impact this? Do we have to back up all of those? Will we have to back up those? Do we know?
So I have not begun to research that yet with regard to what is going to be saved, how long it needs to be saved. That has to do with policy. There are some already written policies out there that I'll be reviewing. One agency sent me their policy and it's been reviewed like by the ACLU and a couple of other things, but this is something that we'll be working with Kathy's office when we go to define these types of things, Mayor. But that is when you look at the cost of body camera systems, the hardware, which a lot of people think of right away, the cameras, all of that type of thing, that's not where a lot of the cost lies. So we are aware of those things and we'll certainly be working on that.
I guess that was my question about whether the system can handle that easily, the increased, or is there a limit to the system? What happens if we have a lot more data all of a sudden coming online?
Sure, let me answer that if I may. So the system, it goes along the lines of, I believe, Councilor Sheldon's questions about upgradability. The system can be upgraded from a storage capacity perspective if needed. And so if whatever body cam solution you go with requires, or if there is a policy change that requires that data be stored on premise, the size of the system can be increased. Our initial research, looking forward 12 to 24 months into the city's requirement to have body cameras, our initial research into the leading manufacturer and vendors in that space all provide cloud storage. So we anticipate that what the city is likely going to have happen is that the leading contenders, the city will likely be able to store their body cam video in the cloud, and that you won't be required to store it on premise. But if you are, the system can expand to support that.
Very good. All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions before
I'll just, if I could, Mr. Mayor, if I could just add one thing. So normally I don't think, Council, we would take sort of such an administrative kind of topic to you for consideration or just for deliberation. However, this does represent a change to our budgets, or especially to our future budgets. Going with this approach is going to add about $4,000 a year in cost for the cloud storage. So I think it is well worth that dollars. You'll see this in next year's budget. So don't be surprised when you see that increase. But given the resilience that we'll get from this, I think it's a completely prudent, wise investment on our part. So that's why we're really bringing it to you tonight, so that you understand that it's got budget implications for you in the future, and so that you have a chance to really understand what we're getting for that additional cost.
And there's no need for supplemental appropriation this year. We're covered. Okay.
That is correct. No need for that.
Thank you very much, Scott and Tracy. Thank you very much for your time, and this was very helpful, actually, to
It's our
us.
pleasure.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, thank you for having us.
Thank you,
everyone.
Tracy. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a good evening.
Mr. Mayor, we had two study session items for tonight, and we didn't anticipate the enthusiastic engagement on that first issue that we got. And it was a good conversation, so I'm glad we had it. I think this next item is probably going to generate more conversation, and it will not wrap up by the time we need to finish for the regular council meeting. We have no studies. Laura is correct, right? We have no study session items on the next May agenda. Is that correct?
We were going to maybe have the liquor code study session, but we don't need to. We can definitely do the long range financial forecast instead.
So, Mr. Mayor, I may suggest that we just push this back to the next meeting to give council the full time to have a robust conversation, because I think it's going to have a lot of different components and aspects to it that folks are going to want to talk about. Councilor Weaver, I know that we brought this at your request. I hope that's okay with you as well.
Yeah,
Well,
I
not
think
only that, sorry.
I think, yeah, that's the way I'm inclined. We only have like 10 minutes here really before we need to turn off. So that's really not enough even to get Jessica to give us the first go around. So probably better if you could do it all at once, I think would be my suggestion, unless there's any other objection to that.
No other objection here. I would say that I think next 2 weeks from now, we're in person, which would be nice to be able to do this in person as well.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I did have a couple questions. I don't want to create a ton of work, but there was at least one other scenario that I might like to throw in the mix. Can I email you about that, and then maybe we can add that in for the next meeting too? Okay.
You bet.
That's a great idea. And also, if anybody has any questions for Jessica beforehand, that that we can, if she can track down things that may make the study session go more smoothly, if she if when you're looking at this you have some questions for her.
Mayor, this is Al. I did give Jessica a different scenario, which I know she's worked on. I would suggest maybe she include that in the packet for the next meeting so we can add, I called it Exhibit E, I think, or Exhibit F, I can't remember. But if we can include that next time, I think that would be great.
You bet. Okay, Jessica.
We'll just call that the owl scenario.
Exhibit Al.
Exhibit Al.
Yeah.
I do. I have Exhibit F ready to go, Counselor
good.
Blum. So I'll make sure that that's in the packet next time.
Okay, great.
I seem to be missing Exhibit B as in boy. And I wondered if, are we going to get a whole new set of exhibits for next study session, or
Yes.
Yes.
some of these? Okay, all right, then I won't worry about it.
All right, I have. Go ahead.
I'd rather have the time and have a quality discussion and kind of get ourselves in a more unified place so that, we're all moving in the same direction and at a good clip and so on.
So the question is 1 hour enough, or do we need to even make it hour and a half? Because this is there's a lot to digest, and the number of the modeling and the scenarios are adding up. So
Yeah.
What's the pleasure of council? We could meet at 5 if you want to, or 5:15.
I think that's probably wise.
5 would be good, I think.
We can, if we end early, we end early.
Well, we could put maybe both. We could put this first and then put the liquor issue second.
If we are in person, can everybody get there by 5? And
They would
then
make it by 5. Yeah, that's the question.
Quick check
Sounds
the
like it.
calendar.
Sounds like a plan. Okay, I have 6:10. We'll end the study session and we'll reconvene at 6:30 in the for the regular meeting of City Council.
What is solfeggio?
No. What is shape note singing? Emily?
That's about countries for 1600.
What is Larry Doyle?
Al, do you mind if I mute you until the,
I'm going to mute my.
okay, thanks. Randy, are you there? Did you get reconnected okay?
He might have stepped away.
Here we go. Sorry.
Oh,
I seem,
that's really echoey.
no, just a second.
Yes, you must have two mics on.
Exactly. Supposed to be muted. All right. Hold on a second. All right, we're gonna get rid of one.
Sound like Darth Vader, like Star Trek. Star Wars thing going on here. Right?
Well,
Sounds good. Huh?
somewhere I think I'm still connected in the background on my PC.
Oh, yep, I do show two of you. I can kick this one out. Remove.
All right, host has removed. That's the PC. That's good.
Okay,
So
you're not
now-
echoey anymore. I think that was it.
Exactly. I don't know what happened. It's like it just sort of, the controls and everything just kind of disappeared. And it couldn't unmute, couldn't turn on video, couldn't do any of that stuff. I don't know what I've got going on here right now because I'm on a tablet.
We can
How's it-
see and hear you fine.
All right, how's the tablet aimed?
Good. Yeah, it's looking up at you a little bit. We can see you.
Okay. Gremlins. PC gremlins. And what I should be seeing now is electronic participation procedure.
Yep, I threw up the PowerPoint while everyone was out.
Perfect.
I can stop
All right.
sharing that now and everyone can see each other.
I'll mute myself so I don't goof up. Hello again, Mr. Mike and Mr. Al.
What's going on there, Randy?
Oh, there we go. Okay.
I have 6:30. Laura, are we ready to go?
Ready to go.
Great. All right, and we have everybody. How about, I don't see. Oh yeah, I see everybody. Okay. Call to order the meeting of the Cherry Hills Village City Council for Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. Laura, if we could have a roll call of members, please.
Counselor Safavi,
Here.
Counselor Wheel,
Glad to be here.
Counselor Brown,
Here.
Counselor Gallagher,
Here.
Counselor Sheldon,
Here.
Counselor Blum.
Here.
All right, we have full attendance today. Laura, do we have any audience participation or any reports from boards or commissions?
We do not.
Then we have agenda item 5, consent agenda. Anyone wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? Or
I
make a
move
motion?
to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Could we have a roll call, Laura?
Counselor Safavi,
Yes.
Counselor Wheel,
Yes.
Counselor Brown,
Yes.
Counselor Gallagher,
Yes.
Counselor Sheldon,
Yes.
Counselor Blum.
Yes.
Next item, new business, 8A, which is a proposal from staff to amend the city council rules of procedure, and this would be City Clerk Gillespie. You have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart, members of City Council. Staff is presenting some proposed amendments to the City Council Rules of Procedure for your consideration tonight. This is not an item for motion or approval tonight because Article 9 of the Rules of Procedure states that they need to be discussed before being approved. So if tonight's discussion results in direction to staff to approve these changes or some version of these changes, then staff will bring back a resolution for final approval at the next meeting. The amendments that we're bringing for council's discussion tonight align the rules with current practices, add references to the electronic participation policy, and clarify the timing of public hearings for proposed ordinances when that timing is not explicitly determined elsewhere in the charter, municipal code, or state statute. The rules were last amended in 2016, and staff is happy to answer any questions.
I'll throw it open to any questions.
Laura, this is Al. It does say that if we vote affirmatively tonight, we can adopt these tonight. Is that correct?
My understanding of Article 9 was that they had to, so it says any additions hereto, modifications or amendments thereof shall be submitted in writing at a regular meeting and shall be acted upon no sooner than at the next meeting of council as an agenda item. This requirement may be waived only upon the unanimous affirmative vote of all members of council. So I guess if everyone did want to approve them tonight, I suppose we could, but we don't have a resolution on the agenda to do that tonight. And since it is a policy, we would normally do that by resolution. So I apologize, I wasn't prepared for that eventuality.
That's okay. I've got this is Al. I've got a couple of questions. I know Dan's got concerns about the electronic participation on public meetings. Where you talk about regular meetings that fall on a major holiday shall be rescheduled, canceled. And I think in the past, for example, the Jewish holidays, I believe of Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah were included also, and we rescheduled. Now, is that something we should put in our rules of procedure? Or is that something that's just going to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis?
You mean listing the specific holidays for which we would reschedule a meeting?
I would just add regular meetings that fall on a major secular or religious holiday shall be rescheduled.
Okay, I'll add that in.
That's the only comment I had.
All right, then Councilor
You know-
Sheldon.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Councilor Sheldon.
I actually have no comments to it. Thanks, Al, for starting me off. I know what you're saying. You're saying I had some comments, I think, in our minutes from about electronic participation for public hearings, but as it relates to these modifications to these rules of procedure, I have no comments. I think they were well done.
Okay.
Councilor Gallagher.
I think these are just good cleanup changes. So good job.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown, any comments, any thoughts?
I just had one, and it's kind of minor, but because it takes generally 2 meetings to make changes to these, we used to get our council packets on Fridays. We moved that up to Wednesday to just give everybody more time. But I don't know that I necessarily feel that it has to be changed in the policy, except that it is only a policy. But, I could foresee a circumstance where we might be working on something that we really want to get on the agenda and it's not available until Friday. And then we'd still be able to do it. We just kind of said, we're going to try for Wednesday because it gives everybody more time. That's not like written in stone. And I guess Friday's not really written in stone either, but I'd probably be more comfortable with leaving it at Friday and just continuing to strive for Wednesday whenever that is possible. That's it.
Other thoughts, Mayor Pro Tem? Councilor Wheel, any thoughts?
Well, I guess I probably have a little different perspective than Katie on it. It's my old ISO certification exercises, say what you do what you say. And if we really want to have them out on Wednesday, then I think we ought to say Wednesday. It's a policy. The world won't come to an end if it's not out on Wednesday, but at least it conforms with the behavior we're trying to achieve. But that's the only comment I have.
Councilor Safavi, any thoughts, comments?
No, the only thing is I want to bring up, I think it is great that, for some of the national holidays, and also for Christian and Jewish holidays, or some of them, we do, not have council meetings. But I think we also got to, out of respect to other folks in our village that have basically they are of other religious backgrounds and they celebrate other religious holidays. Do we need to extend that? And that's a question, because again, we're closing for some Christian and Jewish holidays, but why those and not others?
Well, that's why that's why I left it wide open to say any religious or secular holiday.
Yeah, that's great, Al. And again, this is not I think that's a good thing. I'm glad you mentioned that, but it's more, I want to state that so it's in the meeting minutes, and I want to encourage again, folks with all different backgrounds, come and educate us. If there's certain holidays that, out of respect to them, we need to consider, please do so. That's all. Back to you.
Okay, good comment. Thank you. All right, we can take this up to the next meeting for the changes, and folks can think about it and ponder. Next item on the agenda is Council Bill 4, Series 2021, amending Article 1 of Chapter 2 of the Municipal Code to establish a process to address complaints arising out of municipal campaign finance matters. This is the first reading. City Attorney Guckenberger.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council. So this is something I tried to provide sufficient background in your memorandum, but it's a little more complicated even. As a bottom line is the Colorado Constitution requires, well, you all know that there's fair campaign practices that are required in terms of reporting and disclosure and limits on campaign items, but those are embodied in the Colorado Constitution and in state law, the Fair Campaign Practices Act. Part of that structure, shall we say, in state law required any complaints about the violations or alleged violations of those types of requirements be filed with the Secretary of State. And the Secretary of State had a process set out in law to refer those complaints automatically to hearing before an administrative law judge. Well, there were some challenges on that from a legal basis, basically that the process in place chilled free speech. And part of that was the automatic referring to a hearing. And as a result of a couple of different litigation or, lawsuits and then a change at the General Assembly, it is now in state law that municipal campaign finance matters must be filed exclusively with the municipal clerk. And those are specifically defined as matters that pertain only to municipal campaign issues or candidates. And heretofore, most of the cities had been relying on the cities, towns, municipalities had been relying on the Secretary of State to receive and resolve these kinds of complaints. But now that is incumbent upon municipalities, and there is no process in place in the city to handle those types of complaints. Many other cities have already gotten on board here and adopted a process. And a key part of that process, as you see in the ordinance that's outlined herein, is a screening process whereby the city clerk receives the information, decides, if there's enough legs on the complaint, or if there's not enough facts to support it, or if there's an opportunity to cure. There's a couple of interim steps that can be followed. And if at the end of the day, there's no resolution, that can go to an independent hearing officer. And there are specific time limits imposed to ensure that the process moves along at a required and decent clip so that folks can get back to the business of participating in the election or issue that they're working on. I'll answer any questions.
Kathy, this is Al. Who do they anticipate being a hearing officer? Is that somebody we have to hire as an outside, and do we split the costs? Who pays for that?
It would be the city's cost. Right now, we did not anticipate a large volume. We have other clients that have anticipated volumes for hearing officers on other topics, and they have a hearing officer on retainer. But this would be something, we have a list of folks that we could recommend that we could bring on board pretty quickly pursuant to a services agreement and have them perform the services. But we can change that too. If you think it's handy to have them in the wings in case of a complaint.
Thank you.
That was my question, Kathy. Sorry to interrupt, but just to follow up on that. In the memo, it says that City Attorney's Office recommends that the city issue a request for quote, following adoption of the ordinance for selection of a firm, basically. So is the process that if we move forward, we would choose somebody to be the independent hearing person and they would just be kind of on retainer, or would we do that when there's a complaint?
Well, that's really optional. That's honestly something that we've talked about with the city clerk's office, and that's kind of up to how you think. I don't have a good sense for how many complaints the city would actually experience, and retainer is probably maybe not the exact word I would say, because that would imply some sort of compensation. It would just be someone in the wings pursuant to an agreement that would have an extended term that, once a need arose and a case was referred, then all that legwork would be done. And that's why the recommendation is stated as such in the memorandum. But it could also be ad hoc if you decided that was the way to go. But the advantage, I would say, of having someone selected in advance is that you're not in the heat of the moment. You're not wondering who knows who or what, or, it's predetermined, and it keeps the process more objective.
And the timing, it keeps the thing moving along.
True.
If we're in the middle of a campaign and somebody has to basically hit the pause button on their election efforts while we go about the business of selecting somebody, I certainly think there's a lot of value in doing it now.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely see that. I also see how do you know that they're independent until you know who the people involved in the complaint are. But
yes. Right. And
maybe more than
really
one,
novel.
maybe like, a plan A and a plan B or something. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we can decide how to do that. Think about it for second reading if you'd like.
Councilor Gallagher, questions?
No. Well, I'm just curious. In the last 15 years, has this city ever had a complaint?
This is Laura. I can speak to the last 10 years or 11 years, that we haven't had an official complaint. We've had people come and look at campaign finance forms and sometimes ask some questions, but no official complaint while I've been here.
Thank you. No other questions.
Councilor Wheel, any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Sabavi, any questions about?
Well, I'm trying to, differentiate between questioning and complaint. I mean, during the last election, it was like every other day I was getting an email, who paid for your signs? Who paid for your ad? Who paid for, I mean, it was my bank account paying for those. So I'm trying to understand, and those questions were coming that somebody went to the city and asked that, and Laura was nice enough to send me those emails so I can answer them. And so are those, how does this impact what I just described? So those are questions. So that doesn't, anybody can go, I can go in and say, hey, Mayor Stewart, I see that, you've spent $5,000 on the ad, and how did you pay for that? Is that a complaint? Is that a question? That's the part that I don't understand. If somebody can explain that to me.
Well, I'll just start, and please feel free, City Clerk Gillespie, to add context or color as your experience allows. But sometimes you have to have the information first before you even know if there's been, or you suspect there's been a violation. The first is, let me go in and look at the public documents and the disclosures and the reports and see. And then if that person has some additional information and thinks that that disclosure is inaccurate or, not complete, then they may determine in their own mind that a potential violation of the Fair Campaign Practices requirements has occurred. And if they believe, based on the information available to them, that there's been a violation of the legal requirements, then they would file an actual complaint on a form provided by the city clerk that says, here's what they're supposed to do, here's what they didn't do, I have a problem with this. And then we kick it into the process. If it's failure to disclose something by a time deadline, that's pretty easy. They get a notice to cure. Whoops, I got confused, I was out of town. I'll file it within a certain period of time and we're done. If it grows into a bigger dispute, then you can go to a hearing officer and they will decide whether or not a violation actually occurred based on all the information available.
Okay. No, that's good. No, the only, and we have such a great city. We're a small city. I don't think this will happen, but again, I'm trying to understand when there's questioning, then there is harassment. And then if you don't answer the question, then there is formal filing. So it's just, to me, it's a little gray how you differentiate between those. And I understand it would be probably case by case.
True, and you're astute in your observation that this process can be used maybe not for the way in which it was intended. In fact, that was the basis of the Holland v. Williams Federal District case cited here, where at least some people might have felt that it was used for retaliatory purposes rather than for, ensuring compliance. So that is why time is of the essence. Don't want to chill speech, don't want to tie people up in a process when they have a campaign to run. And we're very mindful of that. And the process is set up to address as fully as possible those kinds of concerns.
No further question. Thanks for that explanation. That was great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I have no question. Thank you for bringing this up, Kathy. Appreciate it and getting the process down.
You're welcome.
And procedures in place unfortunately for us. Well, I guess they should be in place. Hopefully, we'll never have to use them.
That's the goal, right? But if you don't have them, and then you need them, that's not ideal.
All right. If there's nothing further, go on to reports. I can give you.
Do we take up?
You have to mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is first reading.
I move to approve Council Bill 4, Series 2021, a bill for an ordinance amending Article 1 of Chapter 2 of the Municipal Code to establish a process to address complaints arising out of municipal campaign finance matters on first reading.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any other discussion? Hearing nothing, Laura, could you please take a roll call vote?
Counselor Safavi,
Yes.
Counselor Wheel,
Yes.
Counselor Brown,
Yes.
Counselor Gallagher,
Yes.
Counselor Sheldon,
Yes.
Counselor Blum.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody, on first reading, and we'll take it up again next meeting, Laura, or the meeting after.
Next meeting.
Good. All right, if there's nothing more, we can move to reports. I can give a brief report. On April 21st, I had our mayor's lunch, but it was just George Lance and me, and we discussed Greenwood Village and Cherry Hills Village and matters, issues. Nothing big. We did mention the Bellevue interchange, which is kind of stalled right now, pending who knows what by the State Highway Department and Denver and Arapahoe County, and there's still discussions, but nothing imminent. On the 23rd, we had a CML executive board meeting. We set some dates. June 21st will be the annual business meeting. That'll be by Zoom. The annual conference will be September 22nd to 24th. And that'll be on in Snowmass, I believe. Is it?
I think it's Westminster.
Oh, it's Westminster. That's right. They're going back to Westminster.
Because that's where it was supposed to be last year. Yeah.
So that'll be good. We had, in the meeting, there was a long discussion about the House Bill 21-1250, which is Law Enforcement Accountability Act, and positions to take on that, and lobbying positions. That took up a lot of the meeting, but there were at least 24 major bills that were being discussed, and Kevin Bomer said this is probably the most that CML has ever done in 1 year. And so there's a lot of legislation affecting municipalities, about a couple dozen bills. After that, we had a meeting of the Metro Mayor's Caucus, the Transportation and Mobility Committee that I'm on, and we discussed the transportation bill, which was just a draft was given to us. It's 190 pages long. I just received it today. It just dropped. It is now Senate Bill 21-260, and I gave it to Chris. I sent it to Chris literally just an hour ago, or a couple hours ago. So it's a major piece of legislation that, for transportation in Colorado. And I guess in a nutshell, what it does is it transfers money from the general fund to the highway users tax fund. So some money's coming out of the general fund. It creates some enterprises to support and incentivize electric vehicles. It puts a $50 registration fee on electric vehicles, and that'll be indexed to inflation. It has road usage fees on gasoline and diesel purchases. They used to be called gasoline and diesel taxes. Now they're called fees because of Tabor. And then there'll be delivery fees on retail deliveries by Amazon and UPS and others. So those are kind of the highlights, but it's a long bill and does a lot of things. I also just received an email saying the governor announced it today, and he had with him were like who's who. It's the House Speaker, Alex Garnett, Senator Faith Winter, Michael Hancock from Denver, Colorado Springs Mayor John Suthers, Boulder Mayor Sam Weaver, President CEO of Colorado Concern, CEO of Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, the Smart Union, Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, and the Public Policy Director for LIFT were all there. So they've got a lot of folks on board with and working together to kind of put this together. It would be a lot of money, almost more than $4 billion. So involving mobility and road and bridge repair as well. And Chris just sent that. Let's see. On the 3rd, I attended the Arapahoe County Open Space Tax Reauthorization Committee meeting. Again, this meeting was the agenda of this meeting is just talking about the operational costs that Arapahoe County has with a lot of its open space and parks, and how we might need to alter the formula of the sales tax to kind of address the operational needs as well as the purchase of open space and grant money. So we're going to have another meeting. The important meeting will be in several weeks. They're doing polling now with a polling firm that we've retained, and we'll kind of get those results back and then have a meeting to talk about how the final referendum will be worded that will go to the voters in November, the language of the proposal. There will be this Thursday a Metro Mayor's Caucus full meeting of the entire caucus, and I'm sure we'll talk about the transportation bill. This Friday will be the Arapahoe County Mayors, Managers, and Commissioners meeting. And finally, Sunday is Mother's Day. Everybody should remember their mothers, please. Let's see, members of council. Councilor Blum.
No report.
Councilor Sheldon.
No report tonight. Thank you.
Councilor Gallagher.
No report.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No report tonight.
And Councilor Wheel.
One small item. The Dr. Cog folks held their annual awards. I hesitate to use the word gala, but that's more or less what it was called. 1 hour virtual. And the highest award that they hand out at this event is something called the John V. Christensen Award. And our neighbor or former neighbor or whatever you want, Ron Rakowski, longtime mayor of Greenwood Village, was the recipient of that award. And I know several of you know him, so I thought you'd want to be aware of that. That's all I have.
Councilor Savati.
Just maybe a small observation. You know, I've been in Colorado for about 5 years, and I've always wondered why there are not that many biotech or pharma, why the state doesn't really work on recruiting, you know, other than marijuana, start having some of the, you know, pharma biotechs in the state. And, you know, I have to tell you, I don't know if it's because of COVID or if it's because of all the conversation around the vaccine, but I'm really excited to see in the past probably 6-7 months, it seems like there's actual genuine effort. You know, you see it on the CU Innovation Center, you know, in some of the research labs in the hospitals, that people are thinking that, you know, start, you know, encouraging the biotech setups in Colorado, invite the big pharmas to come and actually set up a branch here. So to me, as a pharma scientist, this is really exciting. So it seems like the seeds are being planted throughout at least, you know, in the surrounding area. So I probably will have a little bit more detailed info as what's happening to the council in the next month or two as I'm involved with some meetings. But this is really exciting for Colorado. I think that that, you know, they're going to expand and hopefully see where it goes. But invest in biotech pharma. So let's see where that goes. To be continued. That's all, Mayor, from my end.
City Manager.
Yes, I just have 3 short things for you tonight. We last meeting, I briefly mentioned that just a couple of committee members on the 75th anniversary committee who are still interested in moving forward, but were wanting to make sure that council was still on board. I just planted that seed, just wanting to circle back on that and see if council had any thoughts on that particular issue, if there's concerns or if there's still support for moving forward as budgeted. It just may happen later than we all contemplated.
I guess I would say I'm supportive as long as we think we can do something like this year. By the time it's like the 78th or I think it's getting a little irrelevant, but you know, everybody understands a pushback from COVID. so if we can pull it off this year, then yes. If we, for whatever reason, can't because of other continued restrictions or
Whatever.
I'm not so sure that that's
That is perfect feedback, and I think that's exactly what they were hoping to get a feel for. What you just laid out. If the rest of council kind of feels the same way, that's really all they were looking for. They're not looking for votes or definitives, or they're just trying to get a feel for how far to keep this going. So that's perfect. Just to give all of council a heads up, we are going to be sending you tomorrow morning the updated version of the RFP for Quincy Farm that has gone through a process with Councilor Wheel and Mayor Pro Tem Brown to work on that. And so you are going to see that tomorrow morning. My hope is that this document is ready to go and we can send it out to, to our contacts that we already have a list for, as well as on listing services, etc. So I'm going to just get very presumptuous and aggressive and provide an artificial deadline for you of Friday. However, I understand we're coming up on summer season. You may have more comments than that. That may not be enough time. And if it's not, just let me know. But I'm just going to provide that to you just in the hopes that we can get it out. So I hope that's all right. The last thing I have, and I think it's a great way for me to end my report, we did receive this week final payment for the building permit for the country club renovation. I think the total building permit amount came in just over $400,000. So
Good job, Chris.
Too bad we don't have a building materials tax, huh?
I second that motion.
All right.
I think we do have a couple of other director reports. How about Chief?
I do not have a report tonight. Thank you.
Director Sager.
Good evening. I just wanted to provide an update on the council chambers AV system. We worked with AVI throughout COVID to make sure that everything was repaired based from the last meeting that we actually had in person. We've also tested it with open media last week. So we should be set and ready to go for our first in-person meeting in a couple weeks. So just to reassure City Council that it's been tested and it looks like everything's working still. So
if we do need to have either a council person or a citizen remote in, we should not repeat the phone to the microphone problem from before.
Unless Councilor Sheldon wants to send us his app he used, then we'll be set.
Thank you. Jay, Emily?
I do not have anything to report tonight, so I'll let Emily go.
Jay, this is Al. I've got a quick question for you. Glenmore HOA told me that the fence was being cut between the farm and the path between the farm and Glenmore. Have you been addressing that?
I've been working with the HOA on that. We were hoping to meet with the HOA, but it sounds like their mind is pretty well set that they don't want those openings in the fence. And with the property being the HOAs on both sides of the fence, we have no problem with the holes, but we leave that up to each individual property owner. And since it's their property and not the homeowner that cut the fence, I will have code contact the homeowner and have them close those openings on the fence as the HOA wishes, since they own property on both sides. We were hoping to be able to get some access through there to try to keep children off of Bellevue, but it's the HOA's property, so we really can't do anything.
Okay, thank you.
But we have been working with the homeowners and the HOA on that.
Thank you.
Just a quick one. Thank you for the shout out, if you will, Chris, on Quincy Farm RFP, but also your staff, Kathy Guckenberger, a lot of time, a lot of effort to make sure that the I's were dotted correctly and the T's crossed correctly. It was a lot more than just Mayor Pro Tem and myself that resulted in it. Thank you.
Emily, I think you are the last one.
Yes, if I can jump in, I just have a few reports from parks. The first is that Denver Water has their crews out doing hazard tree work in our section of the Highline Canal. So the trail was closed between Quincy and Colorado today, and it will be closed tomorrow and Thursday as well during the day between 7:30 and 4:30. So we have signs up at all the access points that show that it's closed and what detours are. And we've been trying to get the word out along with the Highline Canal Conservancy. Secondly, we are coordinating with City of Denver about the underpasses opening beneath Colorado and Hamden. So Denver is planning a celebration event. Right now it's tentatively scheduled for June 5th. So they're planning a first ride through with kids from the University Hills neighborhood. So I don't have times yet. I'll keep council updated as we get details, but we're coordinating with them on that event. And lastly, we are also tentatively planning for the John Meade Park and Allen Hutto Memorial Commons to have a grand opening on Saturday, June 26th. Right now, we're thinking a morning event geared really towards kids and entertainment for kids. So we're starting to plan that, within the bounds of what's going to be safe and what all the regulations are going to be at that point. So if council has any feedback on that, I'm happy to hear it.
I'm not here. Not that matters. I'd love to be here, but I'm gone most of the summer. So we'll be looking forward to a report on how it went.
You can zoom in. No. No more.
Hey,
I'll miss
hey,
that.
Emily.
Go ahead.
Emily, would you update us on what's going on regarding the signage as we open up our community to southbound traffic onto the High Line? What's going to greet them and tell them loud and clear that we don't want them racing through our village and that we have some clear guidelines? Tell us what's going on.
So we, there's sort of two separate things happening there. So the wayfinding signs that are going on the length of the Highline Canal are really in their final design stages. We just got the final proofs for our signs, and we have a meeting with the Conservancy tomorrow morning to go through those, make sure, every little thing on them is correct. Those all have the speed limit for the trail on them. So that signing package, we're hoping those signs will go in sometime this summer. They have to be fabricated, so I don't have the exact timeline. So that's one set of signs. And then we're also working on our own signs in the village based on some of the e-bike and speeding conversations that we've been having. So that's on PTRC's agenda for next Thursday, their May meeting. So we'll be talking to them about locations for signs, whether we want to do separate speeding signs and separate e-bike signs, contain it all on one sign. So we're working with the Conservancy on one set of signs and then with PTRC on another. But the plan overall is to have signs pretty much right when you come out of the underpass that will let people know you're entering Cherry Hills Village, and these are some of the rules that you have to follow, specifically speeding and e-bikes.
Emily, quick question on if I may, Mike. So if I heard you correctly, you said all the information is on one sign. So if 5 years from now we decide that we want to actually increase or decrease the speed for the e-bike, then we have to change the whole sign, right?
It depends which sign. So the signing package from the Highline Canal Conservancy, we have different signs as you go through the village. So for example, there's a coyote, like the first one after the underpass then would be a coyote sign that has one set of rules on it. So not every single sign has the speed limit on it. They're on one set of signs. The hours are on a different set of signs. So it won't be that we have to replace every sign. And there are also ways with the way that these signs are designed. My understanding is that we could basically sticker them with an adhesive if we needed to change, if we wanted to drop the speed limit or something like that, without replacing the entire panel.
Thank you.
Emily, are you going to have signage that specifically addresses the concerns that have come up over and over regarding people announcing themselves, bikers announcing themselves when they're coming up from behind? Will that be in writing somewhere?
Yeah.
That says
So
that
those-
is a really important point.
Yes, so that's addressed on multiple signs that we have in the signing package along the High Line. They also contain the yield triangle, so showing that everyone yields to equestrians. So those are addressed in that signing package.
And can you read
Great.
that sign at 50 miles an hour on your e-bike?
Make 'em big.
Well, that's part of the reason that the Conservancy is also to do their Share the Trail campaign to hopefully get people to slow down enough or to actually talk to people to let them know about that. Because yeah, that's Katie, that's definitely a
Speed
challenge.
bumps work all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have you, I have one question for you, Emily. Have you sent out a message on Notify Me about the Highline Canal?
I have not. We sent it out through our social media channels and I had sent it to PTRC, but I did not send an email blast out. I can do that.
If you could do that,
tomorrow.
I'd like to drive people to Notify Me. And then when they call me and say, why didn't you tell me the Highline Canal was closed? I can say, well, did you sign up for Notify Me? If you could do that, that would be appreciated.
Yes, I will do that.
Chris, I have a question on the next meeting being a live meeting. What's the policy on masks for anybody entering the building?
So we will likely institute the same set of additional protections that we had last summer. So limiting the total number of audience members. The latest mask order from Tri-County that applies to our portion of Arapahoe County still requires masks above 10 people, if there's a gathering above 10 people, regardless of vaccinations or not. So there will be masks required. That obviously could change between now and then, but I don't think in the short term it's going to be too much of a trouble for us to continue with the mask wearing during that meeting. I think we're still going to continue to basically implement what we had last summer.
Very good.
All right. Any other comments? If not, it is 7:13 and we can stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a nice Mother's Day.
You too. Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.